Hello and welcome to this exploring session, and today we are looking at the true tragedy of Richard III, wherein is shown the death of Edward IV with the smothering of the two young princes in the Tower, with a lamentable end of Shaw's wife, an example to all wicked women. And lastly, the conjunction and joining of the two noble houses, Lancaster and York, published in 1594 and played by the Queen's Majesty's players some years preceding that date. And that's, broadly speaking, all the information I'm going to throw out at this time. It is, I say, within the repertoire that we have explored in quite some detail now. We've done a great proportion of suggested Queen's Men plays. We only have a few more left to do over the remaining sessions that we know of. It starts getting more spurious the further down the list you go, but this one's fairly well confirmed. And to explore this true tragedy, it's all true, to explore truth, we have this wonderful team of readers, and in fact performing the personification of truth itself. And Richard is...
Hi, I'm Sarah Blake. I'm an actor, writer and director living in Germany.
And performing Hastings today will be...
Hello, I'm Helen Good. I'm a historian and I'm in Yorkshire.
And reading King Edward, brother to Richard, and Catesby is...
Hi, I'm Tamara. I'm an actor usually based in London, currently in Germany in my, don't remember how many weeks it's been, and I look forward to this.
And reading Citizen and Percival is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott. I'm based in Suffolk, and I'm not an actor.
And reading Marquess and Page is...
I'm Aliki, Chapple. I'm an actor, performer, translator, occasionally theatre maker, and I'm based in Lancashire, just for symmetry.
And performing today, Elizabeth, Vaughan and Buckingham will be...
Liza Graham. I'm an actor, singer and Renaissance text coach to actors in London.
And reading Hursly and Gray is...
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Russell, and I'm an author living in Romford in Essex.
And reading Shaw's wife and the younger Edward, at one point Prince Edward, but he will become King Edward briefly, is...
Hi, I'm Ruth Evans. I'm a specialist in late medieval literature and I live in St. Louis, Missouri, USA.
Performing Lodowick and Rivers today is...
Hi, my name is Simon Nader. I'm a Hertfordshire-based actor, writer, and director.
And performing poetry, Morton, Host, and Haute, we haven't decided on precise pronunciation, is...
Hello, I'm Francis Cox. I'm an actor living in Amsterdam.
And joining us today to comment and join in, a newbie to the group. Do introduce yourself. Say hello.
Hello, I'm Jitka Stollava. I'm a Title A Fellow in English Literature at Trinity College, Cambridge, and Richard is my research area, so I'm very excited about this.
Yes, very much here to tell us when we're horribly, horribly wrong. So I am your host, Robert Crighton, and to stop me from going off on flights of fancy, I am your host, and I will also be reading The Ghost of George, Duke of Clarence, who has a vitally lengthy speech in just a moment. Heaven help me. So without further ado, we're going to leap straight into the opening of the play, and we have a little bit of a sort of prologue induction thing to open it all off. So onto the stage enter Truth and Poetry, and then to them the Ghost of George, Duke of Clarence, who, broadly speaking, is going to sort of shout at them for a bit. Crise crucior sanguis sater sanguine, crise quod spiro cito, o cito vindicta. And he then exits.
Truth, well met.
Thanks, Poetry. What makes thou upon a stage?
Shadows.
Then I will add bodies to the shadows. Therefore depart and give truth leave to show her pageant.
Why will truth be a player?
No, but tragedea like for to present a tragedy in England done but late that will revive the hearts of drooping minds.
Whereof?
Marry thus. Richard Plantagenet of the House of York, claiming the crown by wars, not by descent, had, as the chronicles make manifest, in the 22nd year of Henry VI, by Act of Parliament, entailed to him the crowns and titles to that dignity, and to his offspring lawfully begotten, after the decease of that forenamed king. Yet not contented for to stay the time, made wars upon King Henry, then the sixth, and by outrage suppressed that virtuous king, and won the crown of England to himself. But since at Wakefield, in a battle pitched, outrageous Richard breathed his latest breath, leaving behind 3 branches of that line, 3 sons. The first was Edward, now the king, George of Clarence, and Richard Gloucester's Duke. Then Henry, claiming after his decease his style, his crown and former dignity, was quite suppressed till this Edward IV.
But tell me truth, of Henry what ensued?
Imprisoned he in the Tower of London lies, by strict command from Edward, England's king, since cruelly murdered by Richard Gloucester's Duke.
Whose ghost was that did appear to us?
It was the ghost of George, the Duke of Clarence, who was attainted in King Edward's reign, falsely of treason to his royalty, imprisoned in the Tower, was most unnaturally, by his own brother, shame to parent stock, by Gloucester's Duke, drowned in a butt of wine.
What shield was that he let fall?
A shield containing this, in full effect. Blood sprinkled springs, blood spilt craves due revenge. Whereupon, he writes, Cresce cruor, sanguis satietur sanguine, cresce quod spero Cito, oh, Cito, Cito vindicta.
What manner of man was this Richard, Duke of Gloucester?
A man ill-shaped, crooked-backed, lame-armed withal, valiantly minded, but tyrannous in authority. So, during the minority of the young prince, he is made Lord Protector over the realm. Gentles, suppose that Edward now hath reigned full 22 years, and now like to die, hath summoned all his nobles to the court to swear allegiance with the Duke, his brother, for truth unto his son, the tender prince, whose father's soul is now near flight to God, leaving behind 2 sons of tender age, 5 daughters to comfort the hapless queen, all under the protection of the Duke of Gloucester. Thus, gentles, excuse the length by the matter, and here begins truth's pageant. Poetry, wend with me.
And off they jolly well wend. There's lots. It's interesting that we've got, the ghost comes on not only potentially saying that dialogue or just generally roaring, but also it's written on a shield as well. So we have something an emblem with him too. How did you find Truth as a character?
Hilarious. She was just like some kind of gossipy. Like if I'd realised how she was going to go before I started, I think I would have done her as a sort of Yorkshire old lady on the 36 bus, like gossiping to her friend, because she was really getting into all the details there, which is what you want when you're listening to a story. Yeah.
If ever there was a role written for Brian Blessed in a dress,
yes.
We've got it.
Marry thus!
Exactly, there you go.
Richard Plantagenet of the House of York, in a barrel of wine! Poetry, wend with me. Okay. Didn't see that coming. And poetry, the personification of poetry. How did we feel about? Who seems to be mostly feedline.
Yeah.
But I do love the thanks poetry. What makes thou upon a stage?
I was going to say that as well. That's hilarious.
Shadows.
I don't know what Truth's doing there either.
Yeah.
doing on a stage?
Yes, I mean, it's a good question, because it's called the true tragedy, and it's a question of how self-knowing is that as a question of what is true, what is not true.
Well, yeah, I mean, we get the Tudor bias that comes to us from Thomas More, among other sources, but I have to watch what I say here because there's actual experts in the room. But I think just in terms of a brief précis of the story so far, which in our times is quite helpful to have before a history play, I think it is quite effective and economical.
Sometimes it is nice to just have, here's the stuff.
Yeah.
Here's the stuff. You don't need to worry about this stuff. We don't need to fit it into dialogue. Just here's some stuff. And I think they're saying quite honest about that. I mean, it's also interesting for the time. If they assumed the audience already knew all this stuff, it gives truth position to actually be really rattling through it in a sort of quite a comic way, potentially. Tamara?
Well, I was just going to bring up the fact that, and again, experts in the room, so I remember correctly that historically Clarence actually rebelled against his brother? And so he was not an innocent drowned in a wine barrel. He actually genuinely,
Oh, yeah, he had it coming.
Yeah.
I'd have killed him too.
Yeah. So truth is like, this is actually the truth. You may have heard that, he did something. Totally didn't. No.
Sarah?
What I love about it is that it fulfills the role of a prologue. By telling us all the stuff, reminding us of all the stuff. If you were around at the time, you probably already knew it, as you said. But there is actually, it does do it in a really characterful way. There is actually these people, poetry and truth. You could see them as real people. They are real characters that you can actually play and do something with. And give characterization to, and that isn't always something you get with a prologue. I mean, it's something that can be imposed upon a prologue, but here it's actually written into the lines itself, which I think is great, really fun.
It's unusual to sorry.
Yeah, go Simon.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say it's unusual to see, not unheard of course, but unusual to see a prologue that's actually characters, as you say, which I think made that much more imminently kind of tangible to, here's a story, rather than we're now going to tell you we're going to do a story and you better enjoy it, but we're going to say sorry and etc. in advance because it will be awful. But if it's not, put your hands together. It's lovely to have something that's not that. So it was a gripper from the beginning, very well read as well.
And though it's called Truth Pageant, I mean, we have done some work on this already, but I very much see it that poetry is sitting there cribbing.
Yeah.
And going, oh, that's good. Yeah, I'll have some of that. That's good. You can do things with it. That's what's really nice. It invites you to do things with it, which is lovely. Any additional thoughts before we get into actually, some play? Alan, and then I think Helen wants to jump in.
Just a quick thought. I wonder whether this role would originally have been spoken by the person who normally did the clown or the vice, because it's got that sort of verbal structure to it that we've seen before with the vice characters.
Well, I mean, if the composition of the Queen's Men is as it has been posited, then there could be quite a few potential clowns who could be reading this. It could be. It could also not be. But yeah, it's a thought. Helen.
Yeah, I was sort of going back to a bit earlier in the conversation, because you were saying, there's poetry possibly making notes, and it suddenly occurred to me that, of course, the poet is one of the ways of saying the author. So, I mean, is this play the poet's play, informed by truth?
And I think not having a precise answer is really nice. I think, it's that balance between poetry and truth. If you suggest by how it's performed that they are in competition, and that there isn't an absolute side as to whose view this is. Any other thoughts? Anyone want to jump in? Wave at me, Liza.
One very quick one. Rather than being a clown, truth may well be a boy dressed female. That truth is often personified as a woman.
Well, it does state her pageant, so she is gendered. as truth is. Anyone else? Wave at me if you want to jump in. Okay, I'm seeing nothing. I could be wrong. Okay, let's go into the next scene then. Some play action, as it were. Some drama occurs. So enter Edward the Fourth, Lord Hastings, Lord Grey, Marquess of Dorset, and Elizabeth. To them, Richard.
Long life, my sovereign, in all happiness.
An honourable age with Croesus wealth hourly attend the person of the king.
And welcome, you peers of England, unto your king.
For unthankfulness the heavens hath thrown thee down.
I fear for our ingratitude, our angry God doth frown.
Why, nobles, he that lay me here can raise me at his pleasure. But my dear friends and kinsmen, in what estate I now lie, it is seen to you all, and I feel myself near the dreadful stroke of death, and the cause that I have requested you in friendly wise to me together is this: that where malice and envy, sowing sedition in the hearts of men, so would I have that admonished and friendly favours overcome in the heart of you, Lord Marquess and Lord Hastings, both. For how I have governed these 22 years, I leave it to your discretions. The malice hath still been an enemy to you both, that in my lifetime I could never get any league of amity betwixt you. Yet at my death, let me entreat you to embrace each other, that at my last departure you may send my soul to the joys celestial, for leaving behind me my young son, your lawful king, before my decease, may be by your wise and grave counsel so governed, which no doubt may bring comfort to his famous realm of England. But what saith Lord Marquess and Lord Hastings? What, not one word? Nay then, I see it will not be, for they are resolute in their ambition.
Ah, yield, Lord Hastings, and submit yourselves to each other, and you, Lord Marquess, submit yourself. See here the aged king, my father, how he sues for peace betwixt you both. Consider, Lord Marquess, you are son to my mother the queen, and therefore let me entreat you to mitigate your wrath, and in friendly sort embrace each other.
Nay, cease thy speech, Elizabeth. It is but folly to speak to them, for they are resolute in their ambitious minds. Therefore, Elizabeth, I feel myself at the last instant of death, and now must die, being thus tormented in mind.
May it be that thou, Lord Marquess, that neither by entreaty of the prince, nor courteous words of Elizabeth his daughter, may withdraw thy ambition from me?
May it be, Lord Hastings, canst not perceive the mark his grace aims at?
No, I am resolute, except thou submit.
If thou be resolute, give up the upshot, and perhaps thy head may pay for the losses.
Ah, God, sith at my death you jar, what will you do to the young prince after my decease? For shame, I say, depart from my presence and leave me to myself, for these words strikes a second dying in my soul. Ah, my lords, I thought I could have commanded a greater thing than this at your hands. But sith I cannot, I take my leave of you both, and so depart, and trouble me no more.
With shame, and like your majesty, I submit therefore, craving humble pardon on my knees, and would rather that my body shall be prey to mine enemy, rather than I will offend my lord at the hour and instance of his death.
Thanks, Lord Hastings.
Ah, yield, Lord Marquess, sith Lord Hastings is contented to be united.
Yield, Lord Marquess, thou art too obstinate.
My gracious lord, I am content and humbly crave your grace's pardon on my knee for my foul offence, and see, my lord, my breast opened to mine adversary, that he may take revenge, that once it shall be said. I will offend my gracious sovereign.
Now let me see you friendly give one another your hands.
With good will, and like your grace. Therefore, Lord Marquess, here, take my hand, which once was vowed and sworn to be thy death, But now, through entreaty of my prince, I knit a league of amity forever.
Well, Lord Hastings, not in show, but indeed, take thou here my hand, which was once vowed to have shivered thy body in piecemeals, that the fowls of the air should have fed their young withal. But now, upon allegiance to my prince, I vow perfect love, and live friendship forever.
Now, for confirming of it, here take your oaths.
If I, Lord Hastings, falsify my league of friendship, vowed to Lord Marquess, I crave confusion.
Like oath take I, and crave confusion.
Confusion? Now, my lords, for your young king that lieth now at Ludlow, attended with Earl Rivers, Lord Grey, his 2 uncles, and the rest of the Queen's kindred, I hope you will be unto him as you have been to me. His years are but young, 13 at the most, unto whose government I commit to my brother the Protector. But to thee, Elizabeth, my daughter, I leave thee in a world of trouble, and commend me to thy mother, to all thy sisters, and especially I give thee this in charge upon and at my death. Be loyal to thy brother during his authority. As thyself art virtuous, let thy prayers be modest, still be bountiful in devotion. And thus, leaving thee with a kiss, I take my last farewell. For I am so sleepy that I must now make an end. And here before you all, I commit my soul to Almighty God, my Saviour and sweet Redeemer, my body to the earth, my sceptre and crown to the young prince, my son. And now, nobles, draw the curtains and depart. He that made me, save me, unto whose hands I commit my spirit.
And the king dies in his bed. Exit all.
They lived happily ever after.
Well, I have to say, but to thee, Elizabeth, my daughter, I leave thee in a world of trouble. No shit, Sherlock. Oh, I really like that scene. It's interesting. You got that weird. You would have heard it when I said to them, Richard, and I just went, hang on, he doesn't say anything in this scene. I'm sure he doesn't. So is he lurking in the background? Is he there at all? Is that something? You all have noticed there's all sorts of questions about the nature of the text in terms of its tidiness, whether it should be in verse or prose. At points is all over the shop, and I wouldn't fight that too hard. Just let it go. Thoughts from this scene? Who wants to leap in? Simon first, then Tamara.
No, just thinking. I don't know if it's because Aliki gave it such gusto, but you could have some fun here if you were doing a non-conventional reading of the scene. It's very passive-aggressive. Well, I suppose if I have to say sorry, although I hate you still, and you still smell, and I'm not saying you smell, I formerly thought you smell, but let's be frank, it just you could really have fun with that. It's just not a way to apologise and make amends, is it?
It really isn't. No. And you've got the dying king. So you've got that sort of central thing, but then politics around it still going on. Tamara.
Well, I was going to bring up the politics as well, because it's Edward is being a politician even on his deathbed, because he is he's quite manipulative. He's like, guys, I'm dying.
Yeah,
I'm dying. No, using that, which is fair enough, because he's trying to because
he's dying.
Yeah,
he's dying. But also he's obviously trying to protect his legacy and his children and all of that. But it's quite funny how at one point he's just like, I'm gonna die now, bye. And then one of them gives in, because they're like, also, just wondering, is Prince just a way of is that like in Machiavelli, when it's just about a ruler in general, or why are they calling him a prince when he's king?
It's a generic term for a king, for a ruler.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, because presumably they're talking about Prince Edward.
No, they're talking about the king.
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry, which bit we're looking at? I'm looking at a bit which by the king. Sorry.
even Queen Elizabeth referred to herself as a prince while she reigned.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's why I was wondering.
It's the same root as principal, isn't it? The person in charge.
Yeah.
Jitka,
When we talk about politics, it's fascinating that the person who really does a lot in this effort to bring those aristocrats together is the daughter, Elizabeth. She is such an unusually strong political force in this, preemptively, of course. And I love this bit because there was a bit of a story around that. There was a ballad called The Love Song of Lady Bessie, which was very popular. It actually originated in the 1480s, right after the battle. And it presented the story of all this as Richmond was won by Elizabeth. She did all the wooing and all the politicking and plotting, and this seems to slightly feed into the idea of Elizabeth, quite a strong character, despite the fact that she's a princess and a daughter. So that's one thing which I really like about this take on the story.
Prefiguring who she will be by the end of this this story. Anybody else want to leap in with anything before we go further on?
I was just going to say, when I read Elizabeth, I thought it was going to be her mother, and then she said father, and I went, "Oh, she gets lines." Obviously she's important later, but with early modern drama, you're never sure if the girls are actually going to be allowed to speak, even though they're important chess pieces.
Or whether they'll just say one speech in the first scene and then turn into psychopaths at the end. For those
That
who are
never
here.
happens.
Sorry, call back to Lockrine there. Let us move forward then into the next scene. Scene 3, as we got it numbered here. Enter Shaw's wife and Hursly her maid.
O Fortune, wherefore wert thou called Fortune, but that thou art fortunate? Those whom thou favourest be famous, meriting mere mercy, and fraught with mirrors of magnanimity. And Fortune, I would thou hast never favoured me.
Oh, mistress, if you exclaim against Fortune, you condemn yourself. For who hath advanced in you but Fortune?
Aye, as she hath advanced me, so may she throw me down. But Hursly, dost not hear the king is sick?
Yes, mistress, but never heard that every sick man died.
Hursly, my mind presages some great mishaps unto me. The last time I saw the king, he thought ghastly death approached in his face. For thou knowest this, Hursly, I have been good to all, and still ready to prefer my friends to what preferment I could. For what was it his grace would deny Shaw's wife? Of anything, yea, were it half his revenues. I know his grace would not see me want, and if his grace should die, as heavens forfend it should be so, I have left me nothing now to comfort me withal, and then those that are my foes will triumph at my fall. But if the king escape, as I hope he will, then will I feather my nest, that blow the stormy winter never so cold, I will be thoroughly provided for one. But here comes Lodowick, servant to Lord Hastings. How now, Lodowick? What news?
And indeed, enter of Lodowick here.
Mistress Shaw, my lord would request you to come and speak with him.
I will, Lodowick. But tell me, what news? Is the king recovered?
Aye, Mistress Shaw, he hath recovered that he long looked for.
Lodowick, how long is it since he began to mend?
Even when the greatest of his torments had left him.
But are the nobles agreed to the contentment of the prince?
The nobles and peers are agreed as the king would with them.
Lodowick, thou revivest me.
Aye, but few thought that the agreement and his life would have ended together.
Why, Lodowick, is he dead?
In brief, Mistress Shaw, he hath changed his life.
His life? Ah me, unhappy woman. Now is misery at hand. Now will my foes triumph at this my fall. Those whom I have done most good will now forsake me. Ah, Hursly, when I entertained thee first, I was far from change. So was I, Lodowick, when I restored thee thy lands. Ah, sweet Edward, farewell, my gracious lord and sovereign. For now shall Shaw's wife be a mirror and a looking glass to all her enemies. Thus shall I find, Lodowick, and have cause to say that all men are unconstant.
Why, Mistress Shaw, for the loss of one friend, will you abandon the rest that wish you well?
Ah, Lodowick, I must. When the tree decays, whose fruitful branch have flourished many a year, then farewell those joyful days and offspring of my heart. But say, Lodowick, who hath the king made protector during the minority of the young prince?
He hath made his brother, Duke of Gloucester, protector.
Ah me! Then comes my ruin and decay, for he could never abide me to the death. No, he always hated me, whom his brother loved so well. Thus must I lament and say, all the world is unconstant.
But, Mistress Shaw, comfort yourself and think well of my lord, who hath always been a helper unto you.
Indeed, Lodowick, to condemn his honour I cannot, for he hath always been my good lord. For as the world is fickle, so changeth the minds of men.
Why, Mistress Shaw, rather than want should oppress you, that little land which you begged for me of the king shall be at your dispose.
Thanks, good Lodowick.
Enter a citizen and Morton a serving man.
Oh, Master Morton, you're very welcome met. I hope you think on me for my money.
I pray, sir, bear with me, and you shall have it, with thanks too.
Nay, I pray, sir, let me have my money, for I've had thanks, and too much more than I looked for.
In faith, sir, you shall have it, but you must bear with me a little. But, sir, I marvel how you can be so greedy for your money, when you see, sir, we are so uncertain of our own.
How so uncertain of mine own? Why, dost thou know anybody will come to rob me?
Why, no.
Wilt thou come in the night and cut my throat?
No.
Wilt thou and the rest of thy companions come and set my house on fire?
Why, no, I tell thee.
Why, how should I then be uncertain of mine own?
Why, sir, by reason the king is dead.
Oh, sir, is the king dead? I hope he hath given you no quittance for my debt.
No, sir, but I pray stay a while, and you shall have it as soon as I can.
Well, I must be content when nothing is to be had. The king loseth his right, they say. But who is this?
Marry, sir, it is Mistress Shaw, to whom I am more beholden to for my service than the dearest friend that I ever had.
And I for my son's pardon.
Now, Mistress Shaw, how fare you?
Well, Morton, but not so well as thou hast known me, for I think I shall be driven to try my friends one day.
God forfend, Mistress Shaw, and happy be that sun shall shine upon thee, for preserving the life of my son.
Your mercies, good father. But how doth thy son? Is he well?
The better that thou livest, doth he.
Thanks, father. I am glad of it. But come, Master Lodowick, shall we go? And you, Morton, you'll bear us company?
Aye, Mistress Shaw, for my lord thinks long for our coming.
And they exit, leaving the citizen behind.
There, Huffer, but by your leave, the king's death is a main to her credit. But they say there is my Lord Hastings in court. He is as good as the ace of hearts at more. Well, even as they brew, so let them bake for me. But I must about the streets to see, and I can meet with such cold customers as they I met with withal even now. As if I meet with no better, I'm like to keep a bad household of it.
And he exits and the scene ends. Now that's a fascinating scene. It's got that sense of confusion as to where everybody stands at the death of the king. And I find that really interesting, that we've got the question of debts, you know, that sudden fear. God, the king hasn't remitted you of all your debts, has he? That would be awful. There's, I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but there's something a bit creepy in my mind between Lodowick and Shaw's wife. There's something a bit, but it's all to do with, you know, who having some power but now not having it. And there's a weird textual echo in the way they use names of Lodowick. There's something in that I'm half thinking from something else, and I can't think what.
Yeah, I was confused.
It felt very formal, their back and forth, even though I think it's been a bit broken up by what's happened to the text. But it felt like a formal such and such call and response kind of thing, and it was quite weird. I liked it.
Unless you see her as being very kind of wheedling, you know, because she's very manipulative. You know, the repetition of the name is seen as kind of, wheedling.
Liza, I think I see next.
Yeah. I think part of the creepy vibe comes from the status relationship and the power relationship in this scene. That Jane Shore has status as the royal mistress, but Lodowick, since he knows something she wants to know, has power in this scene, and he's the one who angles it out as to how and when he tells her, and sort of observes her reaction to the little bits of information he chooses to give her. Changed his life, by the way, is a phrase that's, you know, the literary people in this room will know that it's been around since the medieval era. So it's definitely in the Morte d'Arthur, and possibly even earlier than that.
Yeah, which is an important thing to note, because otherwise it sounds a bit like a business euphemism for dying. You know, he has moved from his mortal positioning in a general deathwards direction. So that's an important point of reference. Other thoughts about the scene? I think there's a lot to play there. I think I saw Alan's hand up. Did I?
Yeah. Yes, so I was going to ask who that Shaw's wife was. Liza, I think, has covered that, but it's where a dramatic persona at the top would have helped.
Well, I think
in understanding what her role was.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, thinking about it as an audience, you know, that then people would have been more aware than they are today, and that actually the fact that the scene doesn't really explicitly explain anything is actually sort of to its credit.
Yeah.
But we do need to make things clear for a modern audience. That's a good point. Simon, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just about, so my instinct when reading it felt the back and forth actually felt almost like a kind of clown and lady relationship, which as it comes out at the end when she says about land, obviously that's not true. So that was me maybe mistaking the way it goes, but it certainly had a little bit of that, because it's slightly, I don't know, bizarre responses, kind of playful, as you say, almost power. But I felt that was almost like a kind of a full role in the first few lines.
Yeah, it's that really interests me. Sarah,
Is there not as well like an aspect of the fact, because I mean, I was like Alan, it took me a moment to click that Shaw's wife was Jane Shaw, and then I'm like, oh yeah, she was Edward's mistress. So like, is there not, going back to what Liza was saying, is there not this thing of like there's the power struggle, and well, not the power struggle, but the power abuse unfolding at the top of the scene, because he has information that he knows she wants, but also within the actual scene itself, her status just plummets.
Yeah.
You know, she starts the scene as the king's mistress, and then by halfway through, she's literally nothing, because she's nothing without him, and he's just died. And then is it not like, or at least you could play it surely as a back and forth between them, she's kind of testing the ground there to see what's available to her, and maybe, you know, who she can kind of you know, adopt next, who, you know, is there not an aspect of like she's testing to see if Ludowick's not Ludowick, whatever his name is,
Lodowick,
if he's up for it, like, And is that not why she repeats his name, or it could be a reason why she repeats his name so much? It's like
it reminds me weirdly of a surviving bit from The Hunting of Cupid, of this back and forth sort of questioning about love. I don't think it is explicitly framing that, but it's that sort of thing of interrogative question and then a response, and it seems...
It's like she's like, oh, am I flirting with you? Maybe I'm flirting with you. Oh, but if you don't think I'm flirting with you, then clearly I'm not flirting with you.
there are so many power games that could be played with this, and status games. Liza.
Lodowick, I believe, serves Hastings. And I think the common thought is that Jane Shore was Hastings' mistress before she was Edward's. So I don't think she aims at Lodowick. I think there may be some upcoming exchange with his master.
I don't think it's necessarily kind of sexual either, because she tries something quite similar with Morton and the Citizen. I shall be driven to try my friends one day. It's, does anybody know me now I'm down and out? I helped you before. Will you help me?
Yes, she's calling on the favour bank, but with a great deal of uncertainty about whether it's still there. Despite all the stuff she's put in, because she's obviously been very lavish with her favours. I mean, I don't mean that, sorry.
Generous.
She's been very generous, generally.
Anyway, that's all the time we've got on that particular scene. I'm afraid we're going to have to move forward into the next scene, scene 4, and here we have definitely an entrance of Richard. He's definitely in the room. For those who are worrying that the true tragedy of Richard III might not actually feature Richard III, I mean, that would be quite a radical play. So enter Richard, Sir William Catesby, page of his chamber and his train.
My friends, depart. The hour commands your absence. Leave me, and every man look to his charge.
Exit his train.
Renowned and right worthy protector, whose excellency far deserves the name of king than protector, Sir William Catesby wisheth, my lord, that your grace may so govern the young prince that the crown of England may flourish in all happiness.
And exit Catesby.
Ah, young prince. And why not I? Or who shall inherit Plantagenets but his son? And who, the king's decease, but the brother? Shall law bridle nature, or authority hinder inheritance? No. I say no. Principality brooks no equality, much less superiority, and the title of a king is next under the degree of a god. For if he be worthy to be called valiant, that in his life wins honour, and by his sword wins riches, why? Now I, with renown of a soldier, which is never sold but by weight, nor charged but by loss of life, I reap not the gain, but the glory. And since it becometh a son to maintain the honour of his deceased father, why should not I hazard his dignity by my brother's sons? To be baser than a king, I disdain, and to be more than protector, the law deny. Why, my father got the crown, my brother won the crown, and I will wear the crown, or I'll make them hop without their crowns that denies me. Have I removed such logs out of my sight as my brother Clarence and King Henry VI to suffer a child to shadow me? Nay, more, my nephew to disinherit me. Yet most of all, to be released from the yoke of my brother, as I term it, to become a subject to his son. No, death nor hell shall not withhold me, but as I rule, I will reign. And so reign, the proudest enemy shall not abide the sharpest hour. Why, what are the babes but a puff of gunpowder, a mark for the soldiers, food for the fishes, or lining for beds, devices enough to make them away, wherein I am resolute, and determining needs no counsel. Oh, who's within?
And enter Page and Percival.
May it please your majesty?
Ah, villain, majesty.
I speak but upon that which shall be, my good lord.
But what's he with thee?
A messenger with a letter from the Right Honourable the Duke of Buckingham.
And having presumably handed that across, exit page.
Now, Sarah, give place. Oh, this title of majesty animates me to my purpose. Rise, man, regard no fall. Haply this letter brings good luck. May it be, or is it possible? Doth fortune so much favour my happiness that I no sooner devise but she sets a branch? Or does she but to try me, that raising me aloft, my fall may be the greater? Well, laugh on, sweet change, be as be may. I will never fear colours nor regard Ruth. Valour brings fame, and fame conquers death. Percival.
My lord?
For so thy letter declares thy name. Thy trust to thy lord is a sufficient warrant that I utter my mind fully unto thee. And seeing thy lord and I have been long foes, and have found now so fit opportunity to join league, to allay the proud enemy, tell him thus, as a friend, I do accept of his grace, and will be as ready to put in practice to the uttermost of my power, whate'er he shall be to devise. But whereas he hath writ that the removing of the young prince from the queen's friends might do well, tell him thus, it is the only way to our purpose. For he shall shortly come up to London to his coronation, at which instant we will both be present. And where by the help of thy lord I will so play my part that I'll be more than I am, and not much less than I look for. No, nor a hair breadth from that I am. Judge thou what it is, Percival.
God sent it, my lord. But my lord willed me to satisfy you, and to tell you by word of mouth that he hath in readiness a brave company of men.
What power hath he?
A brave band of his own.
What number?
My lord, to the number of 500 footmen, and horsemen aiders unto him, is my lord Chamberlain and my lord Hastings.
Zoons, do he trust the Lord Hastings?
Aye, my lord, as his own life. He is secret, I warrant you.
Well, Percival, this matter is weighty and must not be slipped. Therefore return this answer to thy lord, that tomorrow I will meet him, for today I cannot. And now the funeral is past, I must set a screen before the fire, for fear of suspicion. Again, I am now to strengthen myself by the controversy that is betwixt the kindred of the king deceased and the queen that's living. The young prince is yet in huckster's handling, and they not thoroughly friends. Now must I so work that water that drives the mill may drown it. I climb, Percival. I regard more the glory than the gain. For the very name of a king we double a man's life with fame, when death hath done his worst. And so commend me to thy lord, and take thou this for thy pains.
I thank your grace. I humbly take my leave.
Exit Percival.
Why so? Now fortune make me a king. Fortune give me a kingdom. Let the world report the Duke of Gloucester was a king, therefore fortune me a king. If I be but king for a year, nay, but half a year, nay, a month, a week, 3 days, 1 day, or half a day, nay, an hour, zoos, half an hour, nay, sweet fortune, clap but the crown on my head, that the vassals may but once say, God save King Richard's life. It is enough. Sarah, who's that?
And re-enter page.
My lord.
What hearest thou about the court?
Joy, my lord, of your protectorship for the most part. Some murmur, but my lord, they be of the baser sort.
A mighty arm will sway the baser sort. Authority doth terrify. But what other news hearest thou?
This, my lord, they say the young king is coming up to his coronation, attended on by his 2 uncles, Earl Rivers and Lord Grey, and the rest of the queen's kindred.
Parlous bone to ground upon, a rush stifely knit, which, if I could find a knot, I would give one half to the dogs and set fire on the other.
It is reported, my lord, but I know not whether it be true or no, that the Duke of Buckingham is up in the marches of Wales with a band of men, and, as they say, he aims at the crown.
Tush! A shadow without a substance, and a fear without a cause. But yet, if my neighbour's house be on fire, let me seek to save mine own. In trust is treason. time slippeth. It is ill jesting with edge tools or dallying with princes' matters. I'll strike while the iron is hot, and I'll trust never a Duke of Buckingham. No, never a duke in the world, further than I can see him. And sir, so follow me.
And exit Richard, leaving the page alone.
I see my lord is fully resolved to climb. But how he climbs, I'll leave that to your judgment. But what his fall will be, that's hard to say. But I marvel that the Duke of Buckingham and he are now become such great friends, who had wont to love one another so well as the spider doth the fly. But this I have noted, since he hath the charge of the protector, how many noble men have fled the realm. First the Lord Marquess unto the Queen, the Earls of Westmoreland and Northumberland are secretly fled. How this gear will cotton, I know not. But what do I, meddling in such matters, that should meddle with the untying of my lord's points? Faith, do even as a great many do beside, meddle with princes' matters so long, till they prove themselves beggars in the end. Therefore I, for fear I should be taken napping with any words, will set a lock on my lips, for fear my tongue grow too wide for my mouth.
And exit the page. Again, fascinating scene, because we've got Richard surrounded by people wanting to ingratiate themselves with someone whose power is going up. So we've had a scene where someone's power is going down, and surrounded by potential suitors or helpers. And here we have someone who's on their way up, surrounded by lower status individuals. Richard has not been active in a scene with people on theory of his own class. And I find that really interesting. This is around about the point in this script where whoever thought to try and compose it in verse gives up. And it's wise, because I think that's a madness. So lots of good things. I always like to hear in trust is treason. That's always nice, as Supreme Commander Servalan would say, where there's life, there's threat. Yeah, and we get the page. I love the page.
Why doesn't he have a name?
Because it's the page. Name doesn't help.
I really like this Richard. He's very compelling. He's very compelling. He's very well written. Very concise and cunning. I like him a lot, bro.
What's nice is he's thinking everything out in front of us.
Yes.
You know, it's not like he there's a lot that's very reasonable about what he's saying. That's really, really interesting. Other thoughts? I see Liza.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you both about the writing of Richard. He's, he's a lot of the writing of this play is hyperbolic and kind of weird. But what I'm liking is that it feels like there are certain people in this play who are actual people. And I think Shore's wife is one, and I think Richard is another. Mm-hmm. Having said that, which Richard can get very hyperbolic, and one of the things we are going to see in this play is extravagant threats and promises of violence and violent language. So, like, when he says the young king is coming to his coronation and the queen's kindred are coming with him, Richard says, a parlous bone to ground upon, and a rush stiffly knit, which if I could find a knot, I would give one half to the dogs and set fire on the other. And, yeah, I don't know, Robert, your views on language here, but I believe our youth today would call this big dick energy.
I will. So far, are you saying that some of these come across as real people as opposed to sort of big bold characters? I don't feel that at all so far. Actually, I feel that everybody is actually quite well drawn. I mean, even the prologue, there's so much potential there. And we've got this interaction with these various different characters at different stages. So I find that interesting. Maybe there's something later on that we'll Ruth.
But I do think there's a case for seeing Shaw's wife and Richard as kind of counterparts to each other, and particularly the emphasis that each of them puts on the idea of fortune. So, you know, Shaw's wife talks a lot about the wheel of fortune swinging her around, and now she's on the way down. And Richard sees himself, you know, fortune give me a kingdom, you know, fortune make me a king, and they're very parallel in that sense.
And he's surrounded by people who are saying that's how it's going to be. His henchmen come in and just immediately go, Your Majesty, you know, well, if you insist. Tamara.
I was just going to say, I actually saved a quote from this scene because principality brooks no equality, much less superiority, is so deeply profound. I need to keep it. I know Sarah usually does the t-shirt lines, but I'm keeping this one.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go for it. There's some great arse licking in this scene as well. Helen.
I don't think there's been a character so far who hasn't been playing a status game. Am I going up? Am I going down? Who else is going up? Who should I attach myself to? Who should I disassociate myself from? I think everybody, I mean, I'm not going to here refer to other games in other countries, but this is the status game that everybody is constantly playing, partly for their fortunes, but also for their lives.
Yeah.
Now the king's dead, and we have to protect her. Everything to play for, unfortunately.
Yeah. And you've got to keep on your toes.
Yes.
I mean, even the page is watching very, very carefully. His job is untying the points, helping Richard take his trousers off.
But, you know, the page has some very, you know, for fear I should be taken napping with my words, I'll set a lock on my lips. This page is no idiot.
No.
This page is watching everybody else going. They're all playing these games. They're all doing this stuff. I'm saying nothing.
Whose man is he? We're not quite sure.
Sorry, say again?
Whose man is he?
That's a good question, actually.
Richard's.
Yeah, presumably Richard.
Well, theoretically at this stage, yes, but who knows?
Well, he comes in with a message from... Isn't he the one who comes in with a message from Buckingham? So he might technically be an incoming page who then gets us... Who attaches it. It's an interesting question, actually.
Yeah.
Any other...
Or it might be 2 pages.
There could be 2 pages. It could be a different page. That's true. Jitka.
Well, yeah, just following the conversation, how everyone is trying to position themselves. I love the fact that Richard, of course, is playing the part very carefully, and he learned from the previous scene. We saw him then there looking in the background of the stage direction, and the moment he just decides to drop this hostility that was between him and Buckingham, seeing thy lord and I have been long foes, and but no, I'm gonna join the league. He saw that happening when the king was dying, and he thought, I'm actually gonna recycle that. So there is this play feels very compressed. The characters really are doing the absolute minimum to reach their dramatic goal at that particular bit, and that I think also is quite a unique thing in drama of that period, in my view.
Yeah, it's interesting, the idea of Richard as watcher, which is something that to throw back to the later Ghost of Richard III. There's a lengthy discourse on Richard watching other people's behaviour and learning how to. So actually, him as watcher in that earlier scene makes a lot of sense, and that his physical presence is there, but he's not saying anything. That's really interesting. We need to move forward. I'm afraid there's so much good stuff coming out, but we have to go forward. So we go into the next scene, scene 5, and we have the entrance of the young prince, technically king, but he hasn't been crowned yet. Young prince, his brother, Duke of York, Earl Rivers, Lord Grey, Sir Richard Haute, and Sir Thomas Vaughan.
Right, loving uncles and the rest of this company, my mother hath written and thinks it convenient that we dismiss our train for fear the town of Northampton is not able to receive us. And again, my uncle of Gloucester may rather think we come of malice against him and his blood. Therefore, my lords, let me hear your opinions, for my words and her letters are alone. And besides, I myself give consent.
Then thus may it please your grace, I will show my opinion. First note the two houses of Lancaster and York. The league of friendship is yet but green betwixt them, and little cause of variance may cause it break, and thereby I think it not requisite to discharge the company because of this. The Duke of Buckingham is up in the marshes of Wales with a great power, and with him is joined the Protector, for what cause I know not. Therefore, my lords, I have spoken my mind boldly, but do as your honours shall think good.
Why, my Lord Rivers, wherefore is he protector but for the king's safety?
I, Sir Thomas Vaughan, and therefore a traitor, because he is protector.
We have the prince in charge, therefore we need but care.
We have the prince, but they the authority.
Why take you not the Duke of Buckingham for the king's friend?
Yes, and yet we may misdoubt the Duke of Gloucester as a foe.
Why then, my Lord Rivers? I think it is convenient that we leave you here behind us at Northampton for conference with them, and if you hear their pretend to be good towards the king, you may in God's name make return and come with them, but if not, leave them and come to us with speed. For my sister the Queen hath willed that we should dismiss our company, and the king himself hath agreed to it, therefore we must needs obey.
If it please your grace, I am content, and humbly take my leave of you all.
And exit Rivers.
Farewell, good uncle. Ah, gods, if I do live my father's years, as God forbid I may, I will so root out this malice and envy sown among the nobility, that I will make them weary that were the first beginners of these mischiefs.
Worthily well spoken of your princely majesty, which no doubt shows a king-like resolution.
A toward young prince, and no doubt forward to all virtue, whose reign God long prosper among us.
But come, uncle, let us forward of our journey towards London.
We will attend upon your majesty. I'd assume that as
I'm assuming that's somebody else.
Yes.
I apologise.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I'll just look into. Someone says that. Somebody says that as they go. Might be everybody. Okay, scene ends nice and short. Hello, young prince. Interesting.
Hard to play as a 13-year-old, but yeah.
Well, it's an interesting question of ages and allocation of forces within the company as well. If we've got various parts for women, various parts for young characters, it's an interesting thought about how parts are distributed and who's on stage and therefore not on stage at the same time. So, which we may be able to explore a little more in the sort of between this and the next session. General thoughts about the back and forth between Grey and Rivers. It's a bit of a battle of wits there.
It reminded me of two things. It reminded me of The Crown, and it reminded me of someone's made a mention in Game of Thrones. It reminded me of those two because there's still this complete tumult because the king has died, and they're still vying for positions, and no one knows what to do. So I think it brings a really amount of tension in because no one knows what to do next. They know what they think they can do, but they don't know what to do for the best.
Yeah, because these are all, good people. You said big air quotes, but they have differing opinions about what happens next. And I think it's in the chat we've got Game of Thrones has been mentioned as well. In the sense that it's very much influenced by this kind of material, and there's this period in history as well as material written about it. So that sort of dramatic game is still going on today and still being used. Other thoughts?
Henry VIII, when he was in an accident in the joust, they thought he might have died, and everything went to pot.
Right. Yeah, that was when Anne was pregnant, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big moment of oh fuck. Aliki, I think you were saying something.
I was just going to say that, again, it's the question of who has power and who seems like they have power that's been going on in every scene so far.
Yeah, because he's, in theory has the power, but does he actually wield it? And, how do you make sure? How do you secure the power for this young child? I can't linger on this too long. Any final thought on this scene before we go on? It's quite a short one. Introductory for a number of characters there, who I'm sure will be with us for a great length of this play. So let's go into scene 6. Enter an old innkeeper. Have I given out host to anyone?
Yeah, it's me.
Yes, Francis, good. Thank goodness for that. Enter an old innkeeper and Richard's page.
Come on, mine host. What? Dost thou understand my tale or no?
Faith, my guest, you have amazed me already, and to hear it again, it will mad me altogether. But because I may think upon it the better, I pray you let me hear it once more.
Why then, thus, I serve the Right Honourable the Lord Protector.
I know that too well.
Then this is his Grace's pleasure, that this night he will be lodged in thy house. Thy fare must be sumptuous, thy lodgings cleanly, his men used friendly and with great courtesy, and that he may have his lodgings prepared as near Lord Rivers as possible may be.
Why, sir, if this be all, this is done already.
Nay, more.
Nay, sir, and you love me no more. He's too much already.
Nay, my Lord's Grace's pleasure is further, that when all thy guests have ta'en their chambers, that thou convey into my Lord's hands the keys of every several chamber. And what my Lord's pleasure is further, thou shalt know in the morning.
How lock in my guests like prisoners? Why do you hear my guests? Methinks there should be little better than treason in these words that you have uttered.
Treason, villain! How darest thou have a thought of treason against my lord? Therefore, you were best be brief and tell me whether you will do it or no.
Alas, what shall I do? Who were I best to offend? Shall I betray that good old earl that hath lain at my house this 40 years? Why, and I do, he will hang me. Nay, then on the other side, if I should not do as my Lord Protector commands, he will chop off my head. But there is no remedy.
Come, sir, be brief. There is no remedy. Therefore, be brief and tell me straight.
Why then, sir, here's my hand. Tell my Lord Protector he shall have it. I will do as he commands me. But even against my will, God is my witness.
Why then, farewell, mine host.
Farewell, even the worst guest that ever came to my house. Ah, masters, what a troublesome vocation am I crept into. You think we that be innkeepers get all the world, but I think I shall get a fair halter to my neck. But I must go see all things done to my great grief.
And he exits. Scene doing two things. One, setting up plot, but the other one is it's that same question. Who were I best to offend? You can see the spotlight coming on down, and he turns to the audience and goes, who are best for me to offend? You decide within the audience now. I don't know. Do I go with A, the Lord Protector, or do I betray my family and friends and save my life?
Behind door number 1.
Take the money.
From the box.
Take the cave in the middle of nowhere and stay there for at least 6 months.
Who's going to take the money?
It's a cuddly toy. All right, sorry.
Well, it's interesting because the way the scene starts, it's got the page saying stuff, and I noted, I go, oh my God, is the page drunk and is spilling his guts to the,
Yeah.
No, he's on a mission. And
I was really hoping he was drunk and spilling his guts.
Yeah, no, he's committing terrible crimes and or setting up terrible crimes for other people. And
he's an advance man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's his function. He's, it's a standard thing nowadays. You have advanced teams.
But what should the host do? What should he do? What would you do?
I really like the way that the host here and the citizen in the scene with Jane Shore both widen the world of the play down to common working people, that they illustrate what an impossible position and what terrible times the people of Britain are in. And the host, in fact, that little "who were I best to offend" speech is sort of, I mean, we're within the House of York at this point, but it's sort of the Wars of the Roses in microcosm. Everyone's got loyalties to everyone. Everyone's got family on both sides, and if you choose the wrong thing, you could die.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's a very neat scene because it's almost like a subplot, or it gives a sense of the kind of upstairs, downstairs. You're getting the view of the servants and how they're all implicit in the whole plot themselves, but a different perspective. I like that perspective.
Mm. While also still delivering plot. I mean, that's what's quite nice, is that we're setting up the next scene, or we presume it's setting up the next scene. So they're managing to do these things in parallel. I really love the world of this play. I'm really adoring that it's not just those at the very upper orders and they're doing kingly things and stuff. It's a bit like Thomas of Woodstock in that regard of, really getting the wider world of the play, all the classes being sort of mashed together, though stylistically quite different.
And the page also has a dilemma, because the page has got to deliver.
Mm.
I mean, it's essential to the page that he actually gets the job done, and that he gets the keys.
Mm. Who's complicit? We're all complicit. We're all
setting up the violent action. I think it's interesting when he says, "If I do what you want, I lose my neck on the gallows. If I don't do what the Lord protects us, I lose my head." And I think that's the first. I think Liza was talking about the violent action in the language of the play. It's the first time we start to get, okay, so their lives are on stake now. Their lives are at stake.
Yeah, they're setting up stakes that, it's not just, you might lose status, you might lose money, you might lose your life. And that's a slowly sort of building sense as well. I'm going to have to move us forward, I'm afraid, even though this is all great. Scene 7, enter the Mother Queen. This is really the Queen, the Queen Mother, as we'd probably say it today, and her daughter Elizabeth and her son Richard, Duke of York. So
that's
Richard.
not me, is it? That's a different.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Or have I accidentally? No, I think that is Richard. Oh no, I've looks like I've cocked up the formatting here, doesn't it?
It is you, Sarah. It is.
Oh, is it?
Yes. Yeah.
I, the Gloucester Duke.
Okay, but I'm not Elizabeth's son.
No, it does look like I may have cocked something up here. So let's find out. We'll find out who you are as we go. My bad, I think. Anyway, so Rivers, anyway, is speaking out of his chamber. Let's go from there.
Ho, mine host, Chamberlain, where's my key? What? Penned up like a prisoner? But stay, I fear I am betrayed. The sudden sight of Gloucester's Duke doth make me sore afraid. I'll speak to him, and gently him salute, though in my heart I envy much the man. Good morrow, my Lord Protector, to your grace, and Duke of Buckingham, good morrow too. Thanks, noble dukes, for our good cheer and for your company.
And here enter Buckingham and Gloucester in their train.
Thou wretched Earl, whose aged head imagines naught but treachery, like Judas, thou admitted, was to sup with us last night, but heavens prevented thee our ills, and left thee in this plight. Griefst thou that I, the Gloucester Duke, should as protector sway? And were you he was left behind to make us both away? Wilt thou be ringleader to wrong? Must you guide the realm? Nay, overboard all such mates I hurl, while I do guide the helm. I'll weed you out by one and one. I'll burn you up like chaff I'll render your stock up by the roots, that yet in triumphs laugh.
Alas, good dukes, for aught I know, I never did offend, except unto my prince unloyal I have been. Then show just cause why you exclaim so rashly in this sort, so falsely thus me to condemn upon some false report. But am I here as prisoner, kept imprisoned here by you? Then no, I am as true to my prince as the proudest in thy crew.
Ah, bravely spoken, good old Earl, who though his limbs be numb, he hath his tongue at much at use, as though his years were young.
Speakest you the truth? How durst you speak, for justice to appeal, when as thy packing with thy prince thy falsehood do reveal? Ah, Rivers, blush for shame to speak, like traitor as thou art.
Upbraid you me, a traitor to your grace? No, although a prisoner, I return defiance in thy face. The chronicles I record talk of my fidelity and of my progeny, where, as in a glass, you mayest behold thy ancestors and their treachery. The wars in France, Irish conflicts, and Scotland knows my trust, when thou hast kept thy skin unscarred and let thine armour rust. How thou unjustly here exclaimest, yea, far from love or kin. Was this the oath which at our prince's death with us thou dost combine? But time permits now to tell thee all my mind, for well 'tis known that but for fear you never would have climbed. Let commons now have it in hand, the matter is begun, of whom I fear the lesser sort upon thy part will run. My lords, I cannot breathe it out in words like to you, but this, my honour, I will set to sail. Let any common man come in and say, Earl Rivers, faith until his prince did quail, then I will lose my lands and life. But if none so can do, then thou, protector, injurest me, and thy compartner too. But since as judges here you are, and taking no remorse, spare me not. Let me have all, and justice do your worst.
My lord, lay down a cooling card. This game is gone too far. You have him fast, now cut him off for fear of civil war. Injurious Earl, I hardly brook this portion thou hast given. Thus with my honour me to touch, but thy ruth shall begin.
But as thou art, I leave thee here unto the officers' custody. First, bear him to Pomfret Castle, charge them to keep him secretly, and as you hear from me so deal, let it be done immediately. Take from our garrison one whole band to guard him thither safely. Rivers? Ooh, is that a stage direction? No.
No, it's a character.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is that a Rivers speech? No.
It's Rivers' line.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Rivers' line.
Because
Yes.
I got Richard underneath. Okay. Yeah. And sensed me to common jail? Nathan, I know thy mind. God bless these young and tender babes that I do leave behind, and God above protect them night and day. Those are the marks thou aim'st at, to rid them from their right. Farewell, sweet England, and my countrymen. Earl Rivers leads the way. Yet would my life might rid you from this thrall, but for my stock and kindred to the Queen I greatly fear them all. And thus, disloyal Duke, farewell. Whenever this is known, the shame and infamy thereof, be sure, will be thine own.
And exit Rivers.
So, now, my Lord Buckingham, let us hoist up sail while the wind serves. This hot beginning must have a quick dispatch. Therefore I charge and command straightly that every highway be laid close, that none may be suffered to carry this news before we ourselves come. For if word come before us, then is our pretence bewrayed, and all we have done to no effect. If any ask the cause why they may not pass, use my authority, and if he should resist, shoot him through. Now, my Lord of Buckingham, let us take post-horse to stony Stratford, where happily I'll say such grace to the prince's dinner that I will make the devoutest of them forget what meat they eat. And yet all for the best, I hope.
And they exit. So, yes, to elucidate the slight confusion at the very beginning, the very opening stage direction is effectively a separate scene, a dumb show sort of scene. So between the previous scene with the page and the host and this scene setting up Rivers' capture, there's a dumb show of the Queen Mother and her daughter and her son going to sanctuary. It has no connection with the scene that follows afterwards. It is an error of ancient proportions. Well, they're 14ers, Jim, but not as we know it. There's some horrible mangling gone on here to this text. It's fascinating. Sometimes it works and sometimes it just dies.
Some of it is, I think some of it is lineation. You could fix some of it with better lineation, but how surreal is it to see 14ers here after that beginning?
And also, sorry, carry on, Liza. I was also the way that Richard just swaps back into prose at the end. It's hilarious. It's like he goes all Stock Aitken and Waterman for a bit in the middle, and then he suddenly starts talking like a normal person again, like at the end of the scene when everybody's, when it's all been sorted out. It's fascinating and funny.
Yeah, Alan.
That excursion into verse actually worked for me. I felt that it did actually show a change in dynamic.
Oh, I think it's a really interesting choice for the scene, it's just we just need to work. You'd need to work on it to make it work. Yeah. I think Liza's point there is there. I mean, we haven't had many 14ers for a little while, so it's nice to see it again. Alan, sorry, I cut you off.
The other thought I had was that there's the reference to the oath sworn before the dying king, which would add weight to the thought that Richard is actually on stage during the death scene.
Yeah, I think we've got enough indicators now. Yeah.
The oath.
Yeah. Other thoughts? If I like to use my authority, and if you resist, shoot him through.
Good line.
Deaths within 2 scenes now become very casual. Any other thoughts before we go into the final scene of this session? No, everybody's all seen. I just to sort of close on that. It's really interesting. We have payoff of this locked-in sort of scene. We have, this downfall and away. Rivers was right all along. Was he right, or was he on the other side? I can't remember. But he warned. Nobody listened to the warnings.
They palmed him off. They said, oh, well, if you think maybe the Duke of Gloucester is a baddie, why don't you go and pay attention to him and see if you can get some evidence, dear. Off you go. And
yeah. Should have listened to Rivers. Okay, final scene then. So enter the young prince, or the king, if you'd rather, Lord Grey, Sir Thomas Vaughan, Sir Richard Haute, and their train.
Lord Grey, you do discomfort the king by reason of your heaviness.
Alas, Sir Richard, how can I be merry when we have so great a charge of his grace? And again, this makes me to grieve the more, because we cannot hear from Earl Rivers, which makes me think the Protector and he have been at some words.
Why, good uncle, comfort yourself. No doubt my uncle Earl Rivers is well, and is coming, no doubt, with my uncle of Gloucester to meet us. Else we should have heard to the contrary. If any have cause to fear, it is myself. Therefore, good uncle, comfort yourself and be not sad.
Sweet juice of such a grape would comfort a man were he half dead, and sweet words of such a prince would make men careless of mishaps, how dangerous soever.
Lord Grey, we hear now by all likelihoods the Protector not to be far. Therefore, we are to entertain him and the Duke of Buckingham with courtesy, both for the Prince's behalf and for our own.
Sir Richard Haute, I shall hardly show the Protector or the Duke of Buckingham any merry countenance, considering how hardly I have been used by them both. But yet, for love to my prince, I will bridle my affection, but in good time they come.
And enter Richard, the Duke of Buckingham, and their train.
Long live my princely nephew in all happiness.
Thanks, Uncle of Gloucester, for your courtesy. Yet you have made haste, for we look not for you as yet.
Therein I show my humble duty to your grace, whose life I wish to redouble your deceased father's days.
Thanks, good uncle.
Long live my gracious prince.
Thanks, Buckingham. But uncle, you will bear us company toward London?
For that cause we came.
Gentlemen, on a four, keep your rooms. How now, Lord Grey, do you jostle in the presence of the king? This is more than needs.
My lord, I scarce touched you. I hope it be no offence.
Sir, no great offence, but inward envy will burst out. No, Lord Grey, you cannot hide your malice to us of the king's blood.
Why, good uncle, let me know the cause of your sudden quarrel.
Married thus, noble nephew. The old wound of envy, being rubbed by Lord Grey's venomous rashness, is grown to such a venomous sore that it is incurable without remove of dead flesh.
Lord Grey, I do so much dislike thy abuse that were it not in presence of the prince, I would bid thee combat. But thus, and it shall like your grace, I arrest and attach this Lord Grey, Sir Thomas Vaughan, and Richard Haute, of high treason to your grace, and that Lord Grey hath conveyed money out of the Tower to relieve our enemies the Scots, and now by currying favour with your majesty he thinks it to be hid.
Only this, I add, you govern the prince without my authority, allowing me no more than the bare name of protector, which I will have in the despite of you. And therefore, as your competitor, Earl Rivers, is already imprisoned, so shall you be.
But whereas we are attached as traitors to his grace and govern him without your authority, while we have authority from the mother queen, and for the delivery of the money to the Scots, it was done by a general consent of you all, and that I have your hands to show for my discharge. Therefore, your arrest and attachment is not lawful, and yet as lawful as your quarrel is right.
Thy presumption condemns thee, Lord Grey. Thy arrest is lawful. Therefore see them speedily and secretly imprisoned, and after the coronation they shall answer it by law. Meanwhile, officers, look to your charge.
Ah, gods! And is it justice without my consent? Am I a king and bear no authority? My loving kindred committed to prison as traitors in my presence, and I stand to give aim at them? Ah, Edward, would thou lace by thy father's side, or else he had lived till thou hast been better able to rule. If my near kindred be committed to prison, what remains for me? The crown? Ah, but how? So beset with sorrows that the care and grief will kill me ere I shall enjoy my kingdom? Well, since I cannot command, I will entreat. Good uncle of Gloucester, for all I can say little, but for my uncle Lord Grey, what need he be a thief or convey money out of the Tower when he hath sufficient of his own? But good uncle, let me bail them all. If not, I will bail my uncle Lord Grey if I may.
Your grace undertakes you know not what. The matters are perilous, especially against the Lord Grey.
What perilous matters, considering he is a friend to us?
He may be a friend to win favour, and so climb to promotion in respect of his equals. His equals? Nay, his betters.
I know my uncle will conceal no treason or dangerous secrecy from us.
Yes, secrets that are too subtle for babes. Alas, my lord, you are a child, and they use you as a child. What they consult and conclude of such matters, as were we not careful, would prove prejudicial to your majesty's person. Therefore, let not your grace fear anything by our determination, for as my authority is only under your grace, so shall my loyalty deserve hereafter the just recompense of a true subject. Therefore, I having charge from my brother your father, and our late deceased king, during the minority of your grace, I will use my authority as I see good.
Ay, me, unhappy king.
Nay, let not your grace be dismayed for our imprisonment, but I would we can warrant your grace from harm. And so we humbly take our leaves of your grace, hoping that ere long we shall answer by law to the shame and disgrace of you all.
And exit Grey.
Go. You shall answer it by law.
But come, uncle, shall we to London to our untimely coronation?
What else? And please your majesty, where, by the way, I will appoint trusty officers about you.
Sound trumpet in this parley. God save the king!
Richard.
I love that last word. You know, God save the king, Richard.
Looks straight into the camera and goes,
Yeah,
You
me.
picture-
Oh, there's so much. It's a really interesting question about Prince Edward's big speech there, about how much of that is an aside and how much of that is actually to the room.
Well,
Because-
I tried to do that as an aside, but yeah, he could have done it. Yeah, I don't know. I read it as an aside.
Yeah, well, the question is, of course, you know, because they've just said, you know, look to your charge, so it might be just that they're just putting handcuffs or something on Grey and doing some business, but it's like he needs to stop them somehow, or you know, it's easier today because we just have a spotlight and everyone else freezes, and I'm just wondering about how you navigate that speech because you know it's a good speech. You know, he's no idiot. Whereas Grey, bit of an idiot. Literally the opening stuff of I'm not their friends, but you know I'm sure it'll be fine. Lots of lovely irony. Strange we haven't heard from Rivers. Anyone heard from Rivers recently?
I'm assuming he's possibly.
Yeah. By now, probably yes. So yeah, so much, and Richard's patronising little speech to the prince at the end, just going, "You're too young to understand. Let me, you know, I'm here." You know, it's wonderful, wonderful stuff.
That line, "I will appoint trusty officers about you," is very, very telling. You know, he's isolating the king, getting his own men around him.
Oh well, it's also following on immediately from the two-word sentence. You know, but come, uncle, shall we to London for our coronation? What else?
Yeah.
untimely coronation.
Yeah. Lovely stuff. Anyone else want to jump in before we go into final thoughts? We've got a few minutes before we go into extra time. About this scene?
The untimeliness is because his father died too soon.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with what's gone on in this scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there other thoughts about Richard's character as he's evolved again further in this scene? And Buckingham, actually, I'm not sure. Have we got a handle on Buckingham yet?
What is he up to?
He's not terribly clearly drawn yet here. He just seems to be Richard's reliable right hand at this point.
I mean, there's no mention of his claims and his descent. I mean, he's the descendant and heir of our old friend Thomas of Woodstock, but that isn't here. I mean, he is also another of Edward III's descendants.
Yeah, we didn't get the full family tree at the beginning. I feel robbed.
We'd still be here.
Oh, God, yeah.
But I mean, we're missing out on
sequence.
Sorry, say again, Aliki?
I said maybe we could do a little animated sequence.
Yeah.
Showing all of their ducal seats and...
But in fact, it may turn out not to be relevant for this play. We don't know.
Well, we are only a third of the way through. I mean, you know, we have only, in a sense, scratched the surface of the narrative, and you know, there's that question of if we treat this as a play with two intervals. You know, we've reached the first interval. We're now heading to the bar. What do you think of the show so far? And that's sort of the question for final thoughts around the room as we go into extra time. Anyone want to leap in with general statements, anything from earlier that we moved too quickly through, predictions for the future? Always difficult with a history play because you kind of know where it's going.
Unless it doesn't.
Unless it doesn't. Unless it doesn't. So anyone, thoughts about how you might want to play with this, do it as a production today, those sort of questions as per usual. Anyone want to jump in straight away?
I really like this play. I didn't know it, and I really, really like it. And I think one of the things we started out at the very beginning talking about characterization. And although we've just said that Buckingham isn't very well drawn, I'm really impressed by the characterization. I'm really impressed by what's being done with Richard, because he's not coming across as a kind of melodramatic, dastardly villain. There's a lot of subtlety in the way in which he's presented. And I'm also impressed by Prince Edward, because that kind of combination of, there's quite a lot of nuance in the way in which he recognizes that he's very young, and yet I'm the king, so I should be able to say what I think. And I think the way age is being handled in this play is very interesting as well. So I like it. I'm impressed. I want to see what's going to happen next.
I think, to be fair to Buckingham, he hasn't said that much yet, so we haven't really had a chance. He's said a bit, but so let's hope that we get more out of Buck, old Buck, as it were. Aliki, are you waving?
Yeah, I really like it too, and I like how dry Richard is, how quite pragmatic the tone, but. You asked about staging it, and I'd be quite tempted to get kind of almost a framing story of the ordinary people, so that all of the ordinary people played, you saw them double cast as the nobility, because it's so nice to have so much of them coming up again and again. Right? This is what it's like when kings die and you have underage kings, and nobody really knows what's going to happen next with all of the alliances. So that would be my suggestion.
Lovely. Helen, you want to leap in with your final thoughts?
Yeah, I've been trying to work out how they do the guy who's locked in the room. I presume he's sticking his head out of a window of the inn, and they're outside.
Could work. Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? Because it's
Sorry,
because he's got a lot to say.
Yeah.
You can't have him behind a door banging on it. You need to see him.
Well, unless they burst in through the door once the scene starts, and you just cheats it out front. I suppose it could work that way.
Yeah. It's
a good question, though. We don't have to find the answer. Any other thoughts, Helen?
No.
Lovely.
This is it. I want to see more of Mistress Shaw.
I suspect if it's doubling with a younger actor on the cast, it's probably the presence of the young Prince Edward might be the reason for her current absence. I don't know. I haven't looked ahead. I don't know if that holds any water, but that might be a reason, as it were, within logistics of potential doubling. I saw lots of hands waving at me. So, Simon.
Yeah, just the thing that stands out for me is that apart from perhaps Lady Shaw, where we haven't found much, but even in her little bit, the characterization is very good, very well drawn for everyone. I think, the hosts of the pages, everyone gets a little bit more meat on the bone than just being a brushstroke, so to speak, on this text. So I think that makes it very very entertaining.
Yeah. Tamara.
Yeah, on the characterization, it's fascinating because not only are they all really well drawn and shrewd, they have to be because of the massive stakes that we're presented with. So that's what I really like, because there is no doubt what the stakes are. It's so tense. Everybody's got a knife behind their back ready to strike almost, and everybody else is waiting for who's going to strike. And the other thing is, I'm really hoping, I'm not predicting because modern early drama, but I really want to see more of both Mistress Shaw and young Elizabeth, because they got to speak so early on and they seem so active, and I'm just loving the two of them, and I almost want to see them, you know, duking it out.
You shall go to the ball. No, it may happen. It may happen. I wouldn't want to predict. I wouldn't want.
Yeah,
to...
not if they're being played by the same boy. It won't.
No, it's no. Elizabeth probably can. If that's my logic, but I don't know. Who's next? Wants to jump in with a final thought? Francis.
Yeah, apart from the characterization, which I think is great, as people have said, I really like the way the plot builds as well. Yeah, and I found it, I really enjoyed reading it as well. I found it quite easier to read than some of the other plays I've done so far.
Yeah, I find that's something about the much of the Queen's Men repertoire I found very, very easy on the eye. I do anyway. I don't know how other people do. Jitka, your final thoughts?
It's really wonderful to see in action how Richard is, on the one hand, he is, you know, ticking the boxes of the De Casabus narrative, the Wheel of Fortune. He is very obvious about that in some ways. And we will see things like straightforward violence. There will be some gruesome metaphors. So that would play into that sort of simplified narrative about him that would have been around at the time. But also here, I mean, this scene really showed very well how much people are concerned with law, well, twisting the law, bending the law, interpreting the law. And they want to show this is all legal, Richard, one of them. So I was really struck by the prevalence of the word law in this final scene, but we get that sense of this needs to look good in the histories that are written. And, you know, we had that, was it Rivers who said, you know, in the chronicles I record, they talk of my fidelity and of my progeny, and everyone has this sort of chronicle of the history and the play where they, the part they have. So I think that's really interesting about this play for me.
It's interesting that Gray almost says at one point about that money. Well, it's minuted. We all agreed. It's like, yeah, that's going to work. Poor sod. That question of recourse to law. You know, if everyone's ignoring the law, how does the law work as well? And as well as, you know, how does it look? How does it look? You've got to carry some of the people with you as well, and all those things. Elizabeth, I saw a hand. Final thoughts?
Yes, I think for us returning to our histories, it's quite a light history play because they can be quite dense and difficult to understand. But this one is really light, and I think that the characters are driving the narrative again, which is lovely. But I assume that in the later scenes, the action's going to start, and the violent action.
It usually does, doesn't it? I think that's really the thing of making this narrative really clear. It's made some really clear narrative decisions about. There's an awful lot of history happening, or there's also personal history, and you know, which characters do you include, which characters do you focus in on? And I think this has made some really shrewd choices. I think that's a really good point. Alan, I think you haven't said anything.
I haven't. I must admit that it's slightly unusual from what we've been doing lately, that it's actually far more linear in its approach. We haven't been getting these sort of weird subplots and things charging off in all directions. And it's quite a pleasure not to come across some of this stuff full of Greek myth. You know, we haven't had any Greek references as yet.
Apart from you're right, absolutely right. And you're right. The what you might call the sort of B characters are not in their own separate subplot. It's not like the page is separate. It's doing slightly separate things, but isn't a separate comedy character. And doing that kind of business that we've had in some of the plays we've done last few weeks. So yeah, no, you're right. It's playing a different game, isn't it? Liza, I think you're the last person. Final thought. Have I missed anyone out? I missed Sarah out. I'll come to Liza first, then Sarah. And you, someone.
I do like this play. I remember it as being hilariously awful, and it's not as awful as I remembered it. It actually, like, the characters, there are times when the characters actually talk like people, which is kind of a bar for a play like this. I'd be interested now to know how many textual sources, how many we have for this play, where they agree and disagree. Because things like, and how corrupt this e-text is that we're all using. I do want to go back and relineate some of the 14ers, and not to give much away, but the next scene is lineated as prose, but a lot of it is verse. So I've been quietly relineating that. So I don't know, it would be fun to get an editor's hands on this play and prepare, first of all, maybe a version that's faithful to the original, and second of all, a stage version.
Well, I mean, in terms of the nature of the text, I mean, let's say people have tried wrestling with the verse. I think there's a lot of corruption as it comes to us, and there's lots of textual things which we might be able to talk about in more detail.
It's true. One last thing is that sometimes the written text is unclear. Sometimes it's just unclear punctuation, but in general, I think a characteristic of this writing is goes incredibly hard, but subtle it is not.
I'm not sure I wholly agree on that point at all. I think you've been damning this with faint praise. I'm finding this. There's a lot of depth to these characters. Actually, I'm very resistant. I'm very resistant. But I'm glad you are disagreeing with me, because otherwise this would be boring. We're not here to be boring. That'd be terrible. This is going on the internet. Everything has to be binary, and everyone has to disagree with each other violently. We'll have a mock fight later. It'll be great. Sarah.
I don't think it's awful at all. I think it's really good. Sorry, Liza. I love the characterization. I'm very into my characterizations. And so I think these people leap off the page, not wishing to repeat what others have said, but the fact that this is not just about ennobled men, that, that the low characters and the women are actually, feeding into the main plot, I think is great. And I want to ask you, when you said, Rob, about the fact that you felt that the text was corrupted, do you think then that all that heptameter in scene 7, do you think that was probably then a later corruption?
I think it's untidy, because there's lots of questions about how the text has ended up being in its printed form, so yeah, it's just very fiddly to try and come up with any definite answers as to why bits are like what they are.
Well, this is the thing. Like, I found it just the fact that it's going along and it has this kind of like Jitka said, it has this kind of conciseness to it, and this kind of everything happens, in quite a concise and fluent way, and we get on with the character. The characters developed, quite quickly and quite a lot of depth. This seems to be a playwright who knows what they're doing. And then all of a sudden you get into this weird disco scene where everybody goes into kind of acid dropping heptameter, and I'm like, why has he done that? And I'm like, well, this is a writer who seems to know what he's about, or she's about. there's got to be a reason for that. And I'm thinking, is it because he's basically playing a game here? Is Richard sort of, this is him. We've heard him talking in the past and talking to people, but this is where we actually see him, like, turning the maneuvering into actual action. And it's like he's playing almost in some, like, as in like the way a kind of cat plays with a mouse kind of thing. He's playing with Rivers, and he's sort of sending him off to what he doesn't actually send him off, but we assume he's sending him off to his death. And it's like it suddenly goes all very disco while he's doing that. And I'm just wondering if we're going to then get more heptameter later on. I mean, I know we don't get it in that final scene, which kind of undercuts what I've just said, but like whether it's suddenly going to go all kind of crazy like this again when he's having these moments of acute action where he's basically sending people off and being evil. I don't know if that's going to happen or whether it's just a one-off, but I'm fascinated by it.
We've had plenty of plays where people are changing verse forms at different times there for different scenes for reasons which are never really desperately clear sometimes. And this play, it looks like it's some level of original conception. It did play around between prose and different verse forms and things, and then somewhere in the communication, either it's just micro trims over time during production, which actors make work but don't actually really make any sense, and then how it gets turned into a printed text, horrible things perhaps happen to it. So there's lots of thoughts about that. So in terms of, yes, a lot of what's laid out in prose might technically be verse, but it might be really difficult to try and untangle it as it was originally may have originally been conceived. And also, of course, we don't know that it's by one playwright. It could be by many playwrights.
And it would be fun
plus
just
the
to
amount
kind of...
what the cast do to it over time.
Yeah.
I get the impression, especially with the Queen's Men plays that we've done, is there's an awful lot of on-the-go revision going on. That's my personal feeling about that, and it's a trend that slowly gets stamped out over time with plays and playwrights, and that there's still a lot more flow between a performance text rather than a literary text. But people are allowed to disagree with me on that point. I saw Liza waving earlier, and I've got Alan waving now. Go, Liza.
Well, you already said it, that I was looking at the different verse forms as evidence for maybe more than one authorial hand or rewrite. The prose in particular in this play seems to me to have a different character than some of the verse, but we'll see as we go on.
But as I say, one of the problems is we don't know if the prose is prose. It's just so the compositor gave up. Alan.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether, in fact, the Queen's Men were using the same technique that Mike Leigh has used famously in recent years. Of let's start off with a load of improv, see where we get to, and then try and write it out.
Probably not. Helen is saying something there, but was muted.
Did they have time for that?
Well, it depends precisely when it's created and define time. I don't see that the players don't have the time to do quite a lot of things. I question whether legally you sort of get away with presenting a text that the way of licensing plays. It's easier to just get a playwright to write a play, or playwrights to write plays. I don't know. I think it's very difficult to improvise verse as a group.
I don't know though. Like, you do kind of click into it, don't you? Yeah. Who knows? I mean, I do think though that, sorry, can I just following on from what we were talking about before, I do understand the urge to edit, and I mean, that is the joy of these plays to a degree, that you can kind of do your own thing with them and change bits and play around with them and all the rest of it. But I actually think there'd be, as a performer, I think there'd be something incredibly fun and satisfying about actually staging this as it is, with all its weird quirks of different verse forms and prose. And I think there's something quite tasty about bringing all that to life as it stands.
Well, I don't have a problem with the the verse verse forms being, slightly untidy. In fact, it makes it easier to some degree. I think you just rehearse it, and it was like someone asked a question for something ages ago. It was about how do you get more verse drama on stage? And it's simple. You just don't tell anyone it's in verse, because most people don't notice unless it's it's in rhyme. And I'm currently rehearsing a thing that is in verse. And because it's poetic verse, I'm doing horrible things to it to make it more performable as drama, and at times. I don't have a problem with just doing it straight off the page at the moment. There's nothing here where I'm going, this is too long, this is too boring, this doesn't work. It all seems to work. Any final thoughts? Because we are well past the extra time station. So I'm going to wrap up the session now. It's been very productive. Two more thirds to go from this play. Thank you very much, everyone in the room, and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.